Let's explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Geopolitics with Ghost. Today is April 25th, 2025, and I'm your host, Gordon McCormick, the ghost of bass Patrick Henry. How's everyone in the chat doing? Looks like people are starting to file in. While they do that, let's take a moment to thank our sponsors. And our first, before we get to the sponsors, let's talk about GART, because I will not be doing the show next week, and that will be because we will be in Plymouth, Massachusetts for the 8th GART, the 8th Great American Restoration Tour. Badlands Media is heading to Plymouth, Massachusetts with the 8th stop on the Great American Restoration Tour, May 1st through 4th. Don't miss out on the conversations and shenanigans. Get your virtual tickets today. With virtual tickets, ensure you are part of the action wherever you may be. You'll gain access to an exclusive GART chat to interact with other in-person and virtual attendees, get behind-the-scenes photos and videos, and get to ask the panel questions so you can be part of the live discussion. While many of our show hosts are at the conference, you may notice some changes to our regularly scheduled programming. So get your fix of Badlands Media by purchasing your virtual ticket today. And if you can't watch live, don't fret. Replays of the entire event will be available to all ticket holders. Visit badlandsmedia.tv/events for details on both in-person and virtual tickets. I think we've done 3 or 4 of the exclusive live streams for the ticket holders. We did one on Wednesday. We did one yesterday. And actually we were a little more interactive this time with this GART and asking people during those live streams how they wanted everything to be formatted, what the panel topics they wanted. We used to figure that out kind of on our own. But I think yesterday we may have determined, I don't know if I should say this publicly yet. We may be trying to do like a Family Feud style panel. So like doing like a game show. I don't know if that is official yet. John was talking about it. The chat suggested it. And I think there are people working on seeing if they can make that happen, because I know there's a lot of moving parts there. But that'll be awesome if we do get that up and rolling. But regardless, if it ends up being an utter failure, that panel, that'll still be entertaining, because we'll all be up there kind of making fun of each other. So anyway, oh no, Jackie just said we aren't doing Family Feud anymore. John said no go. Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a last minute thing. Like probably next time. I think we'll yes, Jackie's saying next time. So John must have said that on maybe his show. Yeah, it seemed like it was probably a little last minute. That seems like a lot of work in 1 week to get done. But it's all right. We'll still have a great time. There'll still be other things happening. And the panels are finalized in terms of the people being on them. So anyway, let's do, I need to do one more sponsor before we get going. And that is Goldco. Are you ready for the golden age? With headlines buzzing about Fort Knox, it is time to shine a light on gold. We've seen questions like, is there really gold in Fort Knox, and is the government secretly moving it? But the real question is, are we going back to the gold standard? In a world where economic stability is uncertain, gold remains a timeless asset. Fort Knox, the fortress of America's gold reserves, is under scrutiny, and this might be the moment gold proves its worth once again. Don't miss out on helping to secure your future. Gold isn't just an investment. It can help safeguard against inflation, currency devaluation, and economic turmoil. Whether it's for your retirement as a family heirloom or just to have that peace of mind, this is a perfect time to buy gold. Only time will tell if we are going back to the gold standard. Help secure your wealth now. Visit badlandsgold.com to learn how you can add gold to your portfolio. That's badlandsgold.com. All right. And thank you to Golka. All right. So let's jump into the news. Big news stories this week. I mean, the three biggest ones, in my opinion, the ones that really grabbed my attention. Obviously, the Pope. I'm not really going to talk about the Pope today because we did a long episode of Breaking History about the Pope, and that happened like Monday morning. So I feel like it's probably been covered ad nauseum on every single possible show out there, not just on Badlands, but elsewhere. But yeah, the Pope died, if you haven't heard. And as far as I know, I haven't seen anything about a new one. I don't even know if they've met, if the papal, whatever it's called, has met yet. But yeah, so no news on that other than, yeah, I think Pope Francis, I believe, is laying in state or whatever it's called this weekend at St. Peter's Square. So I imagine that they're not going to do anything with electing a new Pope until that process is over. The mourning process is over. But the other two big storylines, we'll cover those first. First one would be, of course, Klaus Schwab, the head of the World Economic Forum, the founder of the World Economic Forum, founded in 1971 under the guidance of then Secretary of State Henry Kissinger. He resigns effective immediately Monday morning. And since then, we'll just go ahead and jump to the updated headline. The World Economic Forum confirms investigation into claims against founder Schwab. So the World Economic Forum said Wednesday that it has launched an investigation into fraud allegations against its founder, Klaus Schwab, that reportedly prompted his resignation this week. The 87-year-old Schwab, who for decades has greeted presidents and tycoons at the annual forum in the Swiss resort of Davos, said there was not a shadow of proof for the accusations. He added in a statement to the Swiss newspaper Blick that he had started defamation proceedings. In a statement confirming a Wall Street Journal report, the World Economic Forum, or WEF, said its board of trustees unanimously supported the Audit and Risk Committee's decision to initiate an independent investigation following a whistleblower letter containing allegations against former chairman Klaus Schwab. The longtime forum leader suddenly resigned on Monday with immediate effect. In a statement at the time, the World Economic Board hailed Schwab's outstanding achievements and his 55 years in charge. But the Wall Street Journal reported that the move had been spurred by a board decision to investigate allegations of financial and ethical misconduct by Schwab and his wife, Hildy. Emergency meeting. The letter, said to have been sent by an anonymous current and former WEF staff, included allegations that Klaus Schwab asked junior employees to withdraw thousands of dollars from ATMs on his behalf and used forum funds to pay for private in-room massages at hotels. What? Wrote the Wall Street Journal, which said it had seen the letter and spoken with people familiar with the case. It also alleged that his wife used forum-funded meetings in order to justify luxury holiday travel at the organization's expense. The paper said the letter reportedly raised concerns about how Schwab treated female employees and how his leadership allegedly allowed instances of sexual harassment and discriminatory behavior to go unchecked. Schwab had not reacted until his statements to Blick, which said there is not a shadow of proof for all these accusations. It is a pure and simple lie to say that I asked young employees to withdraw thousands of dollars from me at automatic distributors, Schwab added. He said all personal expenses on his business trips were repaid and that he had started defamation proceedings. The Board of Trustees decided at an emergency meeting on Sunday to open a probe, and Schwab opted to resign immediately. In its statement Wednesday, WEF said its decision was made after consultation. I'm sorry. Of course, Ghost is not sharing the screen, of course. Sorry, guys. In its statement Wednesday, WEF said its decision was made after consultation with the external legal counsel and in line with the forum's fiduciary responsibilities. What fiduciary responsibilities does the WEF have? I thought it was just like an NGO. Anyway, while the forum takes these allegations seriously, it emphasizes that they remain unproven and will await the outcome of the investigation to comment further. Network Showcase. Schwab had already stepped down as an executive chairman last year. Okay, that's what I was about to go. I was actually about to go do a quick live dig because I was like, even though this is sudden, and we talked about this a little bit on Wednesday during Breaking History, I remember that there was discussion about him stepping back at the World Economic Forum anyway. But that's what it was. It was last year. He stepped down as executive chairman. So this was him resigning as president, I believe. With Norway's former foreign minister Borge Brinde, I think that's how you say his name, taking over daily management. Schwab said the handover would take until January 2027. So wait a minute. We got to check now. So when he stepped down last year, he said he was going to stay on until January 2027, which that sounds familiar. WEF said its vice chairman, Peter Breivik-Letmeth, would serve as interim chairman as a search committee looks for a permanent replacement for Schwab. Schwab was born in Ravensburg, Germany on, again, we're not going to do his background. We'll do a Book of Trump episode on him one day. Okay, so now my curiosity's peaked a little bit because this is an updated article and they added that stuff about the asking young employees to take out thousands of dollars from the ATM on his behalf and using WEF funds to get massages at luxury hotels. Those two allegations sound a little far-fetched to me. So I look at this as one of two ways. I don't really care what the truth is here because this is like a humiliation moment for Schwab and the WEF. I love that they're acting like the WEF has some sort of fiduciary responsibility, as if it's not anything other than just an elitist gathering of sociopaths who are plotting to take over the world. I mean, that's what it is. Acting like, who does it have fiduciary responsibility to, first of all? The idea that, you know, Schwab wasn't flying around the world taking like luxurious trips with his wife and had access to like infinite amounts of money because of the nature of what he's involved in. Not that he should have access to infinite amount of money, but the idea that he would have to go to young employees and ask them to take money out of an ATM for him, that sounds a little crazy. It sounds a little wild. The idea that he was using WF funds to get massages at hotels, that just has like a little salacious angle to it, which makes it sound a little too good to be true. Like it aligns too much with like the Me Too movement and, you know, the template that we've seen to take down powerful men over and over and over again. It wouldn't surprise me if he was doing that stuff, like if he wasn't doing underhanded, shady things. I just don't think he needs to rely on like young employees to get money out of the ATM for him. I think he can access, he probably has other ways to access funds, unless of course, maybe his assets have been frozen. And I mean, that of course is a wrinkle that we should consider. I am interested to know about once I just want to pull up Klaus Schwab's Wikipedia page, because now I'm a little interested in his titles that he held. Okay, so let's just look at his Wikipedia together. So he's the founder of the World Economic Forum. Yep. He acted as the WF's chairman since founding it in 1971. No successor has been named. So that does suggest, the fact that no successor has been named does suggest that that this is like all of a sudden and was not planned out. Okay, so this is what I remember from last year. June 2024, the Wall Street Journal published an article authored by staff reporters and names those people, stating that Schwab is accused by former WF employees of having engaged in 2 instances of sexual harassment. I do remember that. And that they were pushed out from their role. Okay, so then she had an affair with him, and then she told him that she was pregnant, and he fired her basically, or he pushed her out of her role. Schwab grew upset that she would not be able to continue working at the same pace. People from because she was pregnant. I mean, yeah, that kind of aligns with how these guys operate. They don't like pregnant women, which is why they love abortions. But what I'm looking for is his original. Okay, so I wonder, just me speculating, we won't spend much more time on this, but I'm just speculating here because this kind of feels like a takedown of Schwab, but I'm wondering, the question is it a takedown by like quote unquote white hats, or is it a takedown by other black hats who basically see him as either a liability or maybe they understand that he's not, maybe he's compromised or whatever, and they want to take over the show and keep the ship, keep their pirate ship sailing, right? Um, so I could see it both ways. I could see it happening either way. Uh, those allegations against him just seem so preposterous. Like that he's asking young employees to go to the ATM and take out thousands of dollars. But again, if he's having like if his funds have been frozen for some reason, then that would actually make a lot of sense. I look forward to getting more information about this. But yeah, this guy is definitely bad news bears, and we are happy to see him go. So anyway, the third story that is really, really important to me that I find just pure signal and the thing that I am watching like a hawk is Trump's announcement earlier this week. And this was on April 22nd, which was Tuesday. And it says Trump to visit Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE from May 13th. And it doesn't say this in the headline, but until May 16th. So he's going from May 13th to May 16th, which I believe is a Tuesday to Friday. I think I checked that out yesterday or the day before. And it says U.S. President Donald Trump will visit the Middle East next month on a 3-country tour. His spokeswoman, Caroline Leavitt, said Tuesday it will be his second foreign trip since returning to office following his planned attendance at the Vatican for Pope Francis's funeral on Saturday. Trump will travel to Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE from May 13th until May 16th. So there it is. Leavitt told a White House press briefing without elaboration. I was covering Badlands Live on Tuesday afternoon when this happened. So one of the advantages of running Badlands Live is I have it playing in the background while I'm doing other stuff, and I listened to the press briefing, and she said and heard her say that, and I was like, did a double take, and there was no follow-up. There was no like as I said, no elaboration. She just said he was going to visit those 3 countries from May 13th to May 16th. And that was it. I will say that, let me pull up, where is it? I think it was this article. Well, I don't really know if we need to pull it up, but the Saudi foreign minister, Faisal bin Farhan, last month was in DC, and that's the reason he was in DC. It was either last month, it was the 25th, so it might have been 3 weeks ago. Might have been the beginning of April that he was in. So like this isn't a shocker. Like we knew this was all coming, but what I'm looking for now from this story is I'm looking for Putin rather to say I'm going to be in Riyadh on May 13th as well, which I do think we're going to get that signal. We're going to jump to that in a second. But before we do, let's jump to this one because this feels like some signal to me, and it's related to that. So I have my tabs all open, and I had them organized by country, just thinking one way. And now as I'm running through it, I realized that, oh, these 2 stories are actually connected. So I should actually be talking about this one, even though Iran is not Saudi Arabia. It says, this is from today. It's from this morning. It says, Trump open to, I'm sorry, let's do, I thought I'd archive this. It says Trump open to meeting Iran's leaders, sees chance of deal. He tells, and let's make this a little bigger because, yeah, there we go. So y'all can see that a little better if you are watching. We'll zoom in a little bit. There we go. Trump open to meeting Iran's new leaders, sees chance of deal. He tells Time magazine. In the summary part, it says, quote, I think we're going to make a deal with Iran, Trump says in Time magazine interview. Trump repeats threat of military action if no new nuclear pact reach. If we don't make a deal, I'll be leading the pack. That's a hell of a way to negotiate. I just love the way Trump operates that from a narrative standpoint, because that in a real situation, I don't think this is a real negotiation. I'm with Chris Paul and Burning Bright that I think some of these things were worked out before, but it doesn't mean everything is done and set in stone. I'm absolutely of the belief that that the narrative war is being run in real time against the bad guys, and it's all about corralling them to certain actions and exposing them. So I do think this is a live exercise and a live situation that's evolving, but I do think that certain things have been worked out, and Trump's relationship with Iran, Trump's relationship with Russia, Trump's relationship obviously with Saudi Arabia, Trump's relationship with China, those things are worked out, and now it's all about you leveraging those relationships to our advantage, and so he can say stuff like this, which is extremely provocative, to say, if we don't reach a deal, I'm going to I'm going to lead the pack in firing missiles at your country. It's like that's not a that's not a way to negotiate, but it's very Trumpian, and I do love it. Expert level U.S. Iran nuclear talks to resume on Saturday, mediated by Oman. U.S. President Donald Trump. By the way, what I just explained, that's a signal to you that this isn't a real negotiation, that this is like theater basically that we're watching. And I think Trump Trump obviously knows that. I think he's saying this stuff so that people who are discerning enough, who aren't emotionally like worked up by this stuff, because a lot of people get very emotional, especially with the Middle East, get swept up in the story and they don't really stop and think about it. Yeah. threatening to fire missiles at somebody if they don't do a deal with you is like putting a gun to somebody's head and saying, sign the contract. I mean, again, it's just not a realistic way of negotiating. U.S. President Donald Trump said he's open to meeting Iran's supreme leader or president, and that he thinks the two countries will strike a new deal on Tehran's disputed nuclear program. However, Trump, who in 2018 pulled the U.S. out of a now moribund nuclear deal between Tehran and world powers, repeated a threat of military action against Iran unless a new pact is swiftly reached to prevent it from developing nuclear weapons. Trump, in an April 22nd interview with Time magazine published on Friday, said, "I think we're going to make a deal with Iran," following indirect U.S.-Iranian talks last week in which the side agreed to draw up a framework for a potential deal. A U.S. official said the discussions yielded very good progress. Asked by Time whether he was open to meeting Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, an anti-Western hardliner who has the last say on all major state policies, or reformist President Masoud Pezeshkian, Trump replied, "Sure." Okay, so he was asked, are you open to meeting with this guy or this guy? Which guy are you going to meet with? Are you going to meet with like the hardliner who like hates the West? Or are you going to meet with the reformist who's trying to make amends with the West? And Trump's response was, "Sure," which is, again, very Trumpian. He answered the question by not answering the question, but affirming that he would probably meet with either one. Expert level talks are set to resume on Saturday in Oman, which has acted as intermediary between the longtime adversaries, with the third round of high-level nuclear discussions planned for the same day. Israel, a close U.S. ally and Iran's major Middle East foe, has described the Islamic Republic's escalating uranium enrichment program, a potential pathway to nuclear bombs, as an existential threat. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has called for a complete dismantling of Iran's nuclear capabilities, saying partial measures will not suffice to ensure Israel's security. Asked in the interview if he was concerned Netanyahu might drag the United States into a war with Iran, Trump said no. Interesting there, because I don't think Trump means that Netanyahu's not going to attack Iran. I think he means that he's not going to drag us into a war. So if Netanyahu decides to attack Iran, I don't think we're going to back him. But surely Netanyahu has to know that. I mean, I don't know. I feel like he has to know that, unless he has made friends with people, and surely he has, in the State Department and DOD, who he thinks are going to back him somehow. However, when asked if the U.S. would join a war against Iran should Israel take action, he responded, "I may go in very willingly if we can't get a deal. If we don't make a deal, I'll be leading the pack." Okay, so what he's saying is that if Iran doesn't make a deal, then yes, we will go to war with Iran. But I wonder if the situation that we're going to see is the closer they get to making a deal, the more anxious Netanyahu is getting, and the more kind of like, the more the rhetoric is rising about like last week, after they had a really good meeting in Oman, that first meeting, suddenly Israel was talking about striking Iran, and they're saying like, yeah, we're going to strike Iran. And then they had a great meeting in Rome last Saturday, and suddenly it's like, yeah, well, I think we definitely are going to strike Iran. So I wonder if a deal gets negotiated and then there's like a subversion where Israel tries to strike Iran, and then there's going to be this inflection point where the neocons are going to side, like Rubio and Waltz are going to side with Netanyahu, and Trump's going to have to decide, does he side with Putin or does he side with the neocons? And I think we all know which side he's going to pick if that happens. I'm really speculating there hard. That's a lot of conjecture. I understand that. In March, Iran responded to a letter from Trump in which he urged it to negotiate a new deal by stating it would not engage in direct talks under maximum pressure and military threats, but was open to indirect negotiations as in the past. Although the current talks have been indirect and mediated by Oman, U.S. and Iranian officials did speak face-to-face briefly following the first round on April 12th. The last known face-to-face negotiations between the two countries took place under former U.S. President Barack Obama during diplomacy that led to the 2015 nuclear accord. Western powers accuse Iran of harboring a clandestine agenda to develop nuclear weapons capable by enriching uranium to a high level of fissile purity above what they say is justifiable for a civilian atomic energy program. And what that means is that the official narrative, regardless of how you feel about nuclear weapons and all that, because I know some people are skeptical about what they are, the official science and the official narrative is that enriching uranium to 90% enrichment is considered military grade, weapons grade uranium for nuclear weapons. In order to run a nuclear power plant, you need it to be enriched to about 3.5%. So anywhere from 3.5% to 6%. Like I think 4.5% is what I've read is like the sweet spot. If you can get it to 4.5%, that's what you need for a civil nuclear program. However, if you can get it to between 20% and 60%, and you have a high enough quantity and you have the right delivery system, whatever that means, I guess the right missile system or the right mechanism for igniting it, you can make a 20% to 60% enrichment work. And, I guess it wouldn't be as powerful of a bomb, but it would still be a very powerful bomb. Again, that's the official science, official narrative, and the circumspection, the speculation is that Iran has enriched over 20%, and they do have enriched materials. And so the part of these negotiations are, what do we do with the materials they've already enriched that are over 20%? So discussions have been, does Russia come in and build a safe storage facility and run that facility and house those materials for them? That's I've heard that thrown around. We'll see. This, just kind of explaining some of the stuff this article is mentioning. The comment about U.S. President Barack Obama in 2015 during the nuclear accord, that was April 2016. So after it signed the Iran nuclear deal, he invited King Salman to the White House to get Saudi Arabia to publicly endorse the Iran nuclear deal, because that would have been very beneficial to keeping the deal in place through like the next presidency, who it was expected to be Hillary Clinton. And that was when I've told this story before about MBS coming with his father. He was the defense minister at the time. He was, I think, 30 years old, and he basically just totally ragdolled Obama, and just talked back, not disrespectfully, but Obama accused the Saudis of being, because MBS was talking about how they wanted to enter the nuclear age. They wanted to have, he was excited about the advanced technologies they wanted to develop. They wanted to become a high tech society, a high tech economy. And Obama was like, "What the hell is this guy talking about, dude? You do Wahhabism. Wahhabism is exported by Saudi Arabia. You're responsible for radical Islamic terrorism all over the world." And that was when MBS smacked him down and said, "You have no idea what you're talking about. I will hire a tutor for you to follow you around and educate you on Wahhabism in Saudi Arabia. So next time you talk about this in front of people, you sound like you know what you're saying." Probably the youngest guy in the room. I mean, 30 years old, 29 years old, however, I think he was 30. Had to be the youngest guy in the room, and just totally humiliated the president of the United States, and the report from the CIA mouthpieces was that everyone's jaw was on the ground. And man, MBS has big brass balls for saying that. So respect to him. Now, the reason I bring this up, this article I go here next, is because I wonder if we're going to see like an Iranian official in Riyadh, or not Riyadh, Qatar. Because remember the last story, right? Trump's going to Riyadh, then he's going to UAE, then he's going to Qatar. And again, I'm doing a little bit of conjecture and speculation here, but it's what I do. I can't help myself. I think what's going to happen is Trump's going to go to Saudi Arabia. There's going to be a major announcement in Saudi Arabia with Putin. I think Putin's going to be there with him. I think Putin and Trump are going to have their bromance moment, kind of like Putin and Kim Jong-un did last summer. There's going to be a lot of like memeable pictures that come out of that. It's going to be, in my opinion, if it works out the way I'm thinking it will. I mean, if I were writing the script, it's going to be the milestone, kind of like the turning point in Russian-American relations. In hindsight, I think people are going to say that's the moment that everything changed between America and Russia, and the world moved away from chaos and moved away from world peace and moved towards, moved away from chaos, moved away from World War III and moved towards world peace, rather. And to highlight, to go along with that, the other thing that I think that is going to happen, well, obviously is going to happen, is this. Thought I had archived that as well. And this says that this is from a leak. So I think this was supposed to be. I wonder if this was supposed to be announced. Well, I will speculate what this means after we read through it. But exclusive: Trump poised to offer Saudi Arabia over $100 billion in arms package, sources say. So this is obviously going to be part of the Riyadh trip. Trump to announce arms package to visit to Saudi Arabia in May. Lockheed Martin, RTX, Boeing, Northrop Grumman, General Atomics involved in arms deal. Congress must review major international weapons deals before finalization. The United States is poised to offer Saudi Arabia an arms package worth well over $100 billion. Six sources with direct knowledge of the issue told Reuters, saying the proposal was lined up for announcement during U.S. President Donald Trump's visit to the kingdom in May. The offered package comes after the administration of former President Joe Biden unsuccessfully tried to finalize a defense pact with Riyadh as part of a broad deal that envisioned Saudi Arabia normalizing ties with Israel. The Biden proposal offered access to more advanced U.S. weaponry in return for halting Chinese arms purchases and restricting Beijing's investment in the country. Reuters could not establish if the Trump administration's proposal includes similar requirements. That's an important caveat there. So I've been writing for the Badlands Substack, the Badlands news brief rather, for over a year now, because I started writing for that before the GART Dallas, which was I probably started writing for it in February of 2024. And I was covering a year ago, I was covering how China had a big meeting in Saudi Arabia where they announced that they were going, Saudi Arabia went to China went to Saudi Arabia throughout 2024, and they announced that they were going to be investing billions of dollars in electric car companies in Saudi Arabia. So they're going to be building plants in Saudi Arabia to construct electric cars. And, theoretically, in theory, I would think that they would be selling those cars not only in Saudi Arabia, but around the world. They'd be sending the cars to different places and maybe eventually building plants elsewhere. The other thing they were going to do is they were going to do space tech. There were a number of there was a big space company that they were talking about that they started. There was also some AI companies they were going to start. And the UAE was also discussing like data banks and some high tech stuff, joint ventures with China and Saudi Arabia. So that's what Biden was going after. Biden was saying you can't invest. You need to turn away this money and this investment And really, I think what Saudi Arabia wants more than money, because they have plenty of that, is they want the Chinese contractors. Because one thing that Saudi Arabia doesn't have enough of is skilled labor. So they have to import a lot of labor, as I understand it, especially for construction. They need to import people to Saudi Arabia to, like, you know, perform certain tasks, build certain things, because they don't have the expertise in country, which is one of the things MBS is trying to do. He's trying to get training for all these young people. I think it's something 2 years ago, it was something like 70% of the Saudi public was 30 years old or younger. That was at least a couple years ago. So they have a very, very large. I think they have the youngest population in the world, as I understand it. If I have my facts correct. So, but what that also means that they don't have the knowledge base. I worked construction for, off and on for 20 years, switching back and forth with architecture, and almost 20 years. And you go onto the construction site, and the guys who are the management, the supervisors, the team leaders, they're always the oldest guys. And especially in this economy, you have a lot of guys who should have retired years ago but didn't, because they couldn't. And their companies also didn't want them to, because they didn't have enough young guys who knew what they were doing to replace them. That was a big problem in construction a couple of years ago, was that there was a big knowledge gap between the superintendents who knew what they were doing, and then the next guys up who were like 20 years younger than them. So anyway, you probably don't have all those old heads in Saudi Arabia who know how to build all this stuff. And trust me, the difference between being on a construction site where you have one of those guys and not having one of those guys is everything. So very interesting there. A U.S. defense official said our defense relationship with the kingdom of Saudi Arabia is stronger than ever under President Trump's leadership. Maintaining our security cooperation remains an important component of this partnership, and we will continue to work with Saudi Arabia to address their defense needs. In his first term, Trump celebrated weapons sales to Saudi Arabia as good for U.S. jobs. Lockheed Martin Corps could supply a range of advanced weapon systems, including C-130 transport aircraft, two of the sources said. One source said Lockheed would also supply missiles and radars. Raytheon, RTX Corps, formerly known as Raytheon Technologies, is also expected to play a significant role in this package, which will include supplies from other major U.S. defense contractors such as Boeing, Northrop Grumman, and General Atomics, said for the sources. All the sources declined to be named due to the sensitivity of the matter. They all declined to comment. It's worth noting that the sword dance happened on May 20th, 2017. That was when Trump went to Saudi Arabia, to Riyadh. First foreign visit. I don't count him going to Vatican City for the Pope's funeral, because that's more of like a ceremonial appearance, that he's not going to conduct business or, as the head of state. He's going as the leader of America, as the representative of America. So that's a different situation, and it's also like unexpected. It's not planned. So I don't count that as his first foreign trip. The first foreign trip this time is once again Riyadh, and it's worth noting that when he was on the plane flying to Riyadh last time on May 19th, the White House announced that they had cut a $14.5 billion deal with Saudi Arabia, and I think it was Lockheed Martin. I think they were the ones providing. It was either Lockheed or Boeing were the ones providing the weapons to Saudi Arabia. But they waited until they were on the plane, and then they told the press that, and the press reported it from Air Force One that this was happening. And that, I think that kind of set the tone for, oh shit, something has changed with Saudi Arabia. And then there's something in this article that will bring that up. It said, Lockheed Martin spokesperson said foreign military sales or government transactions, questions about them are best addressed by the U.S. government. Reuters cannot immediately establish how many of the deals on offer were new. Many have been in the works for some time, two of the sources said. For example, the kingdom first requested information about General Atomics drones in 2018, they said. Over the past 12 months, a deal for $20 billion of General Atomics MQ-9B Sea Guardian-style drones and other aircraft came into focus, according to one of the sources. Several executives from defense. So 2018, that means during the first Trump administration, several executives from defense companies are considering traveling to the region as part of the delegation, 3 of the sources said. So Trump's going to roll in there with a bunch of executives from the military industrial complex, although I don't read it as that. Now, I'm going to get to my analysis in a minute. The U.S. has long supplied Saudi Arabia with weapons. In 2017, Trump proposed approximately $110 billion of sales to the kingdom. Proposed it. Didn't happen, though. As of 2018, only $14.5 billion of sales had been initiated, and Congress began to question the deals in light of the murder of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Because you remember, on October 1st, 2018, 1 year after the Vegas shooting, Jamal Khashoggi was dragged into the official story, at least, was that he was in Ankara, the capital of Turkey. He was dragged into he was there to pick up a passport from the Saudi consulate or embassy. He was dragged into the Saudi embassy, allegedly by Saudi, intelligence agents, and he was literally chopped up in little pieces. That's how they describe it. He was butchered into little pieces by these operators in the Saudi embassy in Turkey. And to me, I don't think it gets much more clear that that was a setup to frame Saudi Arabia. I doubt it was actually Saudi operators. They could have been Saudi nationals, but it doesn't mean they were there on MBS's orders. Donald Trump, by the way, said the exact same thing. He says he doesn't believe the official story. The official story came from the CIA, by the way, and he said that he thinks it was somebody else besides the Saudis. But that then turned MBS into a pariah, and Lindsey Graham was saying, I'll never go to Saudi Arabia ever again. I'll never talk to him ever again. He went back to Saudi Arabia. He kissed the ring. That's right, Lindsey. He pussy. Sorry. In 2021, under Biden, Congress imposed a ban on sales of offensive weapons to Saudi Arabia over the Khashoggi killing and to pressure the kingdom to wind down its Yemen war, which had inflicted heavy civilian casualties. Under U.S. law, they did wind down that war in 2023, about 6 months before the October 7th attack. Under U.S. law, major international weapons deals must be reviewed by members of Congress before they are finalized. The Biden administration began to soften its stance on Saudi Arabia in 2022 after Russia's invasion of Ukraine impacted global oil supplies. The ban on offensive weapons sales was lifted in 2024 as Washington worked more closely with Riyadh in the aftermath of Hamas's October 7th attack to devise a plan for post-war Gaza. A potential deal for Lockheed's F-35 jets, which the kingdom has been reportedly interested in for years, is expected to be discussed, 3 of the sources said, while downplaying the chances of an F-35 deal being signed during the trip. The United States guarantees that its close ally Israel receives more advanced American weapons than Arab states, giving it what is labeled a qualitative military edge, a QME, over its neighbors. Israel has now owned F-35s for 9 years, building multiple squadrons. Yeah, so basically it's like Israel gets better weapons than everybody else. This is a big deal, though. So the $100 billion to Saudi Arabia. Remember, Trump said in 2017 he wanted to give them, or 2018, he wanted to give them $110 billion in sales. Congress would only approve $14.5 billion. MBS came over, I want to say it was April of 2018. He sat with Trump in the Oval Office. You know what? We got time. It's my show. We can do this. We're going to watch that clip real quick. Might have it saved. Let me see if I have it saved. If I don't, then we'll just watch it off of... Yeah, here it is. Stand by for processing. Sorry about that. Yeah, so it's only a minute 25 seconds, so I think it's worth listening to. We're going to listen. It's very rare you get to listen to MBS in his own words because the Saudis are pretty private. But let's listen to it.
Representatives here. Crown Prince, thank you very much. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mr. President. Actually, the relation between Saudi Arabia and the rest of America, it's an old relation. We are the oldest ally North America and the Middle East.
Right.
More than 80 years of alliance and big interest, politically, economically, and security, in different area, and a lot of area. And the foundation of the relation, it's really huge and really deep in different issue. We know that today, the relation, it's the cause of more than 4 million jobs in the US of America, directly and indirectly. Also, it's a cause for a lot of jobs in Saudi Arabia, directly and non-directly. And as you know, Mr. President, from day one, you've reached this office. We've planned to to tackle 200 billion US dollar of opportunity in the next 4 years, but it end up with 400 billion US dollar of opportunities. You've talked today, Mr. President, about the military deals. The implementation in it's more than 30%. And also the implementation overall in the 400 billion US dollar of opportunity, more than 35%.
Right.
We planned this for the next 10 years, but it happens in 1 year, we implement 35%. So this is a signal that there is a lot of things could be tackled in the close future and more opportunities. And that's why we are here today, to be sure that we've tackled all the opportunities and achieve it, and also get rid of all the threats facing our both countries and the whole world. So I'm very glad to be here today.
Well, that's right. And
So it might have been kind of hard for some to hear, but because he doesn't speak English very often, but he obviously can speak English. But he said, originally we discussed doing a $200 billion investment, but we're actually probably going to do a $400 billion investment over the next 10 years, although maybe it'll happen faster than that. So again, this is 2018. He's talking about investing $400 billion in the United States over the next 10 years. And we now know that he promised back in January to do $600 billion, but it's probably actually going to be $1 trillion. So, yeah. And, there's a longer clip where he kind of talks about some of the stuff that he's excited about. And he gets very giddy and like rant. He sounds like a kid on Christmas Eve. And, I can relate to that. So sometimes when you get really excited, you talk faster than your tongue will move. And I'm certainly guilty of that. So getting back to the story, it wouldn't surprise me if what we're going to see happen here is we're going to see Trump's going to go to Riyadh. I think he's going to meet with Putin in Riyadh. And him and Putin are going to have this big moment. Him giving $100 billion of equipment, of military equipment to Saudi Arabia is going to give Saudi Arabia a legitimate military, which they've never really had. They've never had a legitimate military under what we call the petrodollar deal of 1970. Technically, it was 1974. That was signed by Henry Kissinger, Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, and MBS's uncle. That would be King Faisal. Faisal was then murdered a year later, assassinated a year later. And that was to resolve the Yom Kippur War. Those who are old enough may remember that at the end of 1973, there was an oil embargo in the United States in response to Israel invading, starting a war with the Arabs. And because of the oil embargo, there was gas rationing. So you'd have to go wait in line, as I understand it, for like 7 hours on Saturday in order to fill up your family car with gas. Yeah. And so Kissinger resolved that situation by promising, he said, look, Saudi Arabia, you don't have to have a military. We will be your military. In exchange, you are going to sell all of your oil in US dollars. And that's what created what we call the petrodollar. So anyway, it was very beneficial in the immediate aftermath for the American people and the American economy. But long term, it set up circumstances that have been exploited by the bankers to rob us of our wealth. So that's what's important to understand about that. How's the chat doing? I haven't checked on the chat in a while. All right. Looks like we got a good crowd. Hit the thumbs up, guys. Appreciate all y'all being here. Yeah, so giving Saudi Arabia, I think, a legitimate military is going to be a big step towards the multipolar world order, because we want to see the Middle East take care of itself. All right. And Iran is obviously the big power in the Middle East. Turkey's another very big power. Egypt is a traditional big power, but politically, I kind of would put them under Saudi Arabia at this point. It seems like, I mean, according to MBS says he has President Sisi in his back pocket, and he could get rid of him whenever he wanted. Whether or not that's true, I don't know. But I mean, according to Douglas McGregor, Colonel McGregor, that Sisi was installed by the U.S. in after the overthrow of the Muslim Brotherhood in 2013. Muslim Brotherhood during the Arab Spring took control of the Egyptian government in 2011. So I guess you'd call it a counterinsurgency. So I think having Saudi Arabia as a very strong military gives a good counterbalance and a reason for the U.S. not to be in the Middle East anymore, because I don't think we want to be in the Middle East anymore. If we have strong allies there who can take care of themselves, who can take care of the neighborhood, why do we need to have anything more than maybe a tiny little presence? We don't need to station guys there that end up being big targets for bad actors, right? So Trump goes to Riyadh. He meets with Putin. I think he announces the deal with MBS, gives Saudi Arabia a lot of legitimacy. Maybe other narratives are spun out of that. He then goes to the UAE. I wonder what's going to happen in the UAE. The UAE could potentially be it could be an Israel-Abraham Accords thing. I mean, they're the ones who are kind of credited as being the brokers of the Abraham Accords officially. It could be a Bitcoin thing. The UAE, Bukele and Mohammed bin Zayed, MBZ, have been meeting. I mean, MBZ went to this is the leader of the UAE. Only became the leader in 2022, by the way. He went to El Salvador last year, and it was like this big moment, like where he showed up there, and Bukele shook hands, and Bukele posted about it and made some kind of allusion to Bitcoin. I can't quite remember, but I remember Bitcoin spiked right after that because everyone thought that UAE was going in on Bitcoin, and they probably did. So it could be a Bitcoin thing. The UAE did announce late last year they were going to invest, or maybe it was December or January. They announced that they were going to be investing I want to say it was either hundreds of millions, or couldn't have been hundreds of billions, but maybe hundreds of millions in this massive data bank in the UAE. And that kind of data bank is what you would need to mine a lot of Bitcoin. So I think that there's a lot of signal there. And, G Money can tell you all about the digital 1776, but for those who get frustrated with G Money's presentation, the way he explains software, and he's explained software to me, and I haven't read Jason Lowery's entire software dissertation, although I should. I've read a lot of it though, and it is very, very interesting. His ideas about how kinetic war could be forever changed by this, the economics of kinetic war, and how you would be disincentivized from bombing cities if by bombing those cities you're going to take out data centers that then would ultimately lower the price of Bitcoin, because these mining facilities would be gone. And if you as a country have a strategic Bitcoin reserve, you are then basically damaging your own currency. It's a very fascinating theory. We'll see. So anyway, the third leg of that trip, the Qatar trip, I wonder, being Doha, the Qataris are trying to position themselves as the brokers of peace. They want to be like the middlemen of bringing two sides together who have not gotten along. That's what Steve Witkoff told Tucker Carlson. That's what they're trying to reinvent themselves as. I wonder if we're going to see Trump and Iran meet in Doha, meet in Qatar, and do like that meeting that they just alluded to in that other article. It makes way more sense for Trump and Putin to meet in Riyadh with MBS being there. It does make sense for Trump and the Iranians to meet face-to-face in Qatar. And the reason being is that after MBS came into power in 2017, he immediately went to war with Qatar. He did this big embargo. It lasted until January of 2021, about 7 days before Trump left office, 9 days maybe before he left office, they met and signed like a peace deal, like ending the conflict between. It wasn't a kinetic war, but it was like every other kind of war: psychological warfare, political warfare, economic warfare. Ships were not allowed to go to Qatar. Like all the ships were rerouted everywhere else. Or Qatari ships were not allowed to dock in Dubai or Abu Dhabi or Riyadh. I'm sorry, not Riyadh, but Jeddah. Any of the places around Egypt. Egypt wouldn't take them either. So it was a pretty big deal. MBS also put out a RFP, a request for proposal, which is what you do in construction, to dig a canal. There already is a canal, like a small canal between the borders of Qatar and Saudi Arabia. Qatar is a little small peninsula, and he put out an RFP to extend the canal across the entire border to turn Qatar into an actual island. And he went as far as like, I don't know if he issued contracts, but he went very far with that, and then he just kind of dropped it. But he was like, "Yeah, I'm going to turn you into an island, Qatar." And he like kicked out. He outlawed Al Jazeera, which is a Qatar MI6, I think, media outlet. And what that did is it forced Qatar into the arms of Iran, because Qatar and Iran, just like Saudi Arabia and Iran, had not been friends. Qatar is an Arab nation. Saudi Arabia is an Arab nation. They didn't get along with Iran ever since the 1979 revolution. All of a sudden, Qatar needed friends. They went to Tehran with hat in hand and became friends with the Iranians. I also wonder if that was the back channel that Trump used to get into Tehran. But point is that Qatar has a good relationship with Iran now. Saudi Arabia has a good relationship with Iran now. I wonder if Trump and the Iranians will meet in Qatar. That 3-leg trip is going to be a big deal. And it's worth noting that he's not going to Tel Aviv, at least not yet. It's a big deal that he's not going there. I think there are probably some people who are a little upset about that. All right, we're going to go to Russia. But before we do, let's finish up in the Arab world. Well, actually, we got two pretty big stories from the Arab world. And I thought I had this one. 1 second. Oh yeah, it's all the way back here. Here it is. All right, sorry, my tabs weren't well organized. This is a big one. Jordan moves to dissolve the Muslim Brotherhood and force nationwide ban. Very, very big deal. Very, very big deal. And I want to pull up a Google map just to show everyone, because maps are great, and we like maps here on Breaking History, Geopolitics with Ghost, and the Book of Trump, all of them. Badlands Daily too. Just Badlands in general. We like maps. All right, so just to give everyone their bearings, we are looking at the world. All right, you see where we are. So as I just explained, there's Qatar. There's the border of Qatar. You can see there's like a canal that already runs in there, and so MBS was talking about extending this. There's a canal right. I don't know exactly where it is, but there's a canal that comes in from this inlet, and he was going to extend it all the way across the border and just turn this into an island. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of a savage move. But so here's Jordan. All right. And so Jordan, what's important to know about Jordan, this goofy shape, very, very goofy shape. You probably have wondered, why is Jordan shaped that way? And I can explain that to you right now. Jordan is shaped that way because I think I may have shown this map last week on this show. And if I didn't, I apologize. But the British ran these pipelines at the end of World War I. When they carved up the Middle East, they drew these white lines. The British and the French did. They wanted to mine the oil, or I'm sorry, they wanted to extract the oil in Kirkuk, these big, huge oil fields they had over here in Iraq. They ran them down here into Haifa, which was at the time Palestine. And they needed these pipelines to be protected. And so in between Saudi Arabia and Syria, they created what was called at the time Transjordan, which was like Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia was Saudi Arabia. They gave Arabia to the Saudis, took it away from the Hashemites, gave it to the Saudis. Well, or rather, Ibn Saud took it away from the Hashemites, but they backed him. And so they created a buffer between Syria and Arabia by adjoining Iraq with Transjordan. And so Transjordan got this goofy little shape right here. Also, they could protect these pipelines. It's also worth noting that Jordan is the only country in the Middle East that doesn't have a domestic oil program. Look at these massive oil fields that they have right here. They don't extract any of that stuff. They're not allowed to. They're not allowed to. They've been told their whole existence, which has only been since, I mean, it's been about 106 years. They've been told they're not allowed to extract this oil. This is not their oil to take. And so, yeah. So I mean, they are very much like a dependent, they're basically like a subsidiary of the West, especially ever since we chopped up his the current king's uncle or great uncle and his family and his cousins in Iraq in 1958 during the Ba'ath, when the Ba'ath Party came in and took power, because they wanted to join the kingdoms of Iraq and Jordan into one giant kingdom. Chopped up the royal family in Iraq. That was the end of the royals in Iraq, the Hashemite kingdom. And yeah, bad news bears. So goofy shape for Transjordan, now known as Jordan. They don't get to have their own domestic oil program, which is criminal in my opinion. And also the nation of Jordan, which is, it's a lot of desert. It's a very, very arid place. 2/3 of it is Palestinian. So after the Nakba of 1948, the Palestinians are all driven out of Palestine by, the Israeli militias, the Jewish militias, which eventually become known as the Israeli militias, which then merge and form the IDF in 1949. But all the people who fled from Palestine then populate Jordan, and Jordan become 2/3 of their population are now Palestinian nationals. And that's why they call this area on the, Palestine/Israel, and Jordan is separated by the Jordan River. And that's why the larger section of Palestine, the smaller section down here, is called the Gaza Strip. And the larger one, you probably can't even see my mouse, so I apologize for saying right here. But the larger part of Palestine is called the West Bank, because it's the west bank of the Jordan River, and the east is the Kingdom of Jordan. So anyway, that's a little history lesson. You'll get those from time to time around here. And yeah, it's also worth noting. Let's go back to the map. So here you go. So here's the West Bank. That's why they call it the West Bank. It's because it's on the west side of the Jordan River, and the rest of the Palestinians live in the Kingdom of Jordan. The Gaza Strip after the Nakba in 1948, which is Arabic for the catastrophe. Gaza becomes a protectorate of Egypt. Okay. President Nasser is who is aligned with the Soviets. He outlaws the Muslim Brotherhood. And he says anyone caught even talking about the Muslim Brotherhood in the Gaza Strip, as well as Egypt, will be executed. It's worth noting that in 1967, during the Six-Day War, Israel retakes control of the Gaza Strip. They invade Gaza, they invade the West Bank, military occupation. They also, by the way, invade Sinai. They take control of the entire Sinai Peninsula, and part of that was about taking back the Suez Canal from Nasser. or from the Egyptians rather. And both of those places, Gaza and West Bank, have been under military occupation ever since, until Hamas came into power in 2006 and drove the IDF out. So point is that when the IDF retook control of or took control of Gaza, they allowed the Muslim Brotherhood back in. They reversed that ban and they said, no, Muslim Brotherhood can come back in. Y'all come back in. Muslim Brotherhood comes back in, and eventually you get the creation of Hamas by the Muslim Brotherhood. And, Netanyahu will tell you now he likes that because that gives him an enemy to fight, a reason to invade, a reason to annex Gaza, which is now what they're openly talking about doing. So this is all political chess. So now Jordan is outlawing the Muslim Brotherhood. And the question is, why haven't they done this before? Well, I think the reason they haven't done this before is because, for the reasons that I just said, their cousins were all cut up into little pieces, literally cut off the head of the king, his hands, his feet, cut off the head of the prime minister, his I think it was either his brother or his cousin, heads, hands, feet, stripped the bodies naked, hung them. I mean, there's pictures of it. Don't go look for them, but there are pictures of it online. Hung them, upside down in the public square, rounded up all the women and the children, brought them into the palace courtyard, shot them all in the head. That was the end of the Hashemite. These were good, decent people, by the way. The Hashemites were people who were considered like the good people, the people that we can deal with, who share our values and, are the good guys. Look at Abdullah, King Abdullah, his wife, Queen Raina is, she's like Melania Trump. Here, I'll show you a picture of her. See, this is her. Beautiful woman. All right. So these are people who like share our values. They're good people. This is her and the king at a young age. These are good people. All right. So the question is, why haven't they done this before? Well, let's read the article. Maybe they'll tell us. But I think it's because that Abdullah and his father both lived under threat of their life throughout their entire lives. Jordan moves to dissolve Muslim Brotherhood and force nationwide ban. Membership in or affiliation with the Muslim Brotherhood is now prohibited by law. Last week, Jordan arrested 16 members of the Muslim Brotherhood. Jordan's interior ministry has announced a sweeping set of measures against the Muslim Brotherhood, formally declaring the group dissolved and illegal. The announcement came during a press conference on Wednesday, where the interior minister, Mazen Faria, outlined the government's decisive steps aimed at safeguarding national security and public stability. The minister confirmed that membership in or affiliation with the Muslim Brotherhood is now prohibited by law, and that all the group's offices across the kingdom have been permanently closed. A judicial order was issued to facilitate the closure of headquarters and branches, with security forces deployed to enforce the decision and confiscate the organization's assets. The interior minister described the Muslim Brotherhood's continued activities as a threat to citizens, a barrier to national development, and a destabilizing force. He revealed that members of the dissolved group had planned to target sensitive sites, stored weapons and explosives in residential neighborhoods, and operated covertly to undermine public security. The presence of hidden agendas and divisive rhetoric from within the group is incompatible with Jordanian unity, the minister stated, adding that we cannot allow division among members of a single society. A special dissolution committee has been activated to expedite the legal and administrative process of seizing the group's assets and ensuring full compliance with the ban. This announcement follows the arrest of 16 members of the Muslim Brotherhood last week, an operation that Jordanian authorities say exposed plans to disrupt security and stability. The Jordanian media Commission announced that it will take legal action against any individual or outlet that publishes, broadcasts, or promotes content related to the Muslim Brotherhood. This is identical to what Nasser did in Gaza after the Nakba. It's remarkable. MI6 most affected, the British intelligence, they are the ones who created the Muslim Brotherhood in 1928 in Cairo, Egypt. And that was done by, just to bring this thing full circle, Evelyn Baring, who was a British banker who was appointed as the head of Egypt after Egypt. I think I went through this last week. I feel like I've talked about this before. I most definitely have. but they failed to make their loan payments on the Suez Canal. So we won't go back into that all over again, but that's what happened. And Evelyn Baring is the one who said, "Oh, public education is not good enough here in Egypt. We're going to fund British schools, Prussian British schools." Evelyn Baring was a Prussian. His family was from Prussia. That bank, Baring Bank, is the same bank that lent King George III the money to hire the 30,000 Prussian troops, Hessian troops, that invaded Massachusetts and drove George Washington all the way from New York into Pennsylvania and almost defeated the Continental Army in 1776. And then he went back the night of Christmas and cut their throats in their sleep. The Battle of Trenton. But same exact bank, not good people in my opinion. They come in, they create schools in Cairo in the 1870s, 1880s. These schools prop up this guy named Rashid Rida, who was a extremist Salafi. He had this, he promoted Salafi Islam, which is radical Islam. Wahhabism technically falls under the umbrella of Salafi Islam, but he promoted these radical Islamic ideas, like the idea of like Sharia law and all the things that we have come to understand the negative aspects of Islam. He promoted them. Children in Egypt attended these schools, and then MI6 used the schools as recruiting centers to recruit into, their sphere of influence until ultimately one of the students in 1928, they tapped to create the Muslim Brotherhood, and that's how the Muslim Brotherhood was formed. The original one was Saudi, was a Saudi Arabia thing that was destroyed in 1927. Different story. We won't go into that right now. All right, let's do an ad. Because I've been ranting a little too much. What ad do we have? We have Pet Club. Thank you, Pet Club, for sponsoring the show today. And let's make sure we can play that ad. Experience the miracle of a God-given first responder for your health and an ally in your body that fights everything from minor ailments to major health threats. That ally is your immune system. At Pet Club 24/7, we harness the ancient wisdom of nature with our exclusive potent strain of medicinal mushrooms revered for thousands of years for their immune-supporting properties that are extremely safe with no additions or overdoses, no side effects, and no interactions with medications. Transform how you manage your health with our all-natural products and help Pet Club change the world one pet and one person at a time. Visit badlandsmedia.tv/pet club now to explore how we're redefining wellness for both pets and people. That's badlandsmedia.tv/pet club, treating pets and their parents better. Thank you to Pet Club. All right. How's the chat doing? Ninth Plague, your ranting is why we watch. I know this is like my safe space where I'm actually allowed to rant, and I don't have CanCon or John telling me to wrap it up. Although Matt never really tells me to wrap it up because Matt likes to rant too. So Matt and I just kind of like rant at each other. All right, back to the news because there are a few more stories that I want to get to that are pretty big deal. All right, so that story about the Muslim Brotherhood coincided, here's some more signal for you, with King Abdullah in Riyadh meeting with MBS. Okay. And I wrote a Substack article, almost 2 years ago. It was about 2 years ago now. I think it was published in August of 2023 on the Badlands Substack, where I describe MBS's character arc as being a redemption arc. And the redemption arc is because his great grandfather back in well, I'm sorry, no, it would be just his grandfather, not his great grandfather founded the House of Saud in 1744. That guy's name was MBS as well. But his actual grandfather, meaning his father's father, Ibn Saud, went into Mecca and threw out Abdullah's great grandfather. That's kind of funny. Isn't that funny? The guy on the right is, in this picture, is 39 years old. The guy on the left is, I don't know how old he is, 65, 60. And yet the guy on the right, his direct grandfather, went to war with the guy on the left's great grandfather. That's very strange, isn't it? But that's history. So Ibn Saud, went into Mecca, and threw the Hashemites out with being backed by the British. That was all part of like the betrayal of the British against the Arabs and the Arab Revolt. So it says King Abdullah expressed pride in historical relations between Riyadh and Amman. Two leaders discussed recent developments in the region, particularly the situation in the Gaza Strip. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman met Jordan's King Abdullah II on Wednesday during an official visit to Saudi Arabia. King Abdullah arrived in Jeddah, accompanied by Crown Prince Hussein, who was received by Deputy Governor of Mecca, Prince Saud bin Mishal bin Abdulaziz. The Saudi press agency reported. So Hussein is probably, if he's not MBS's age, he's probably like 3 or 4 years younger than him. I want to say Hussein's like between 35 and 40. Let me look that up real quick. Oh no, he's way younger than that. He's 31. Yeah, so he's 31. Yeah, so Hussein is 31. His father is 63. So I was close. I said 65 or 60. Yeah, so his father's 63. He's 31. And the reason that this is all just so strange is because, number one, MBS's own father had him when he was pretty old, relatively old. I think it was his third wife. And he's not supposed to be 38-year-olds, 39-year-olds are not supposed to be crown prince of Saudi Arabia. That is not how this is supposed to work. So we are in a very, very unique, we're witnessing a very unique time in history. But it's a very exciting time in history. Let's watch this video. All right, never mind. It's just a montage. This guy right here. Okay, so let's break this down. These guys on this couch, I can tell you this is Khalid bin Salman. This is the defense minister of Saudi Arabia. This is MBS's younger brother, full brother. This is this guy right here is Faisal bin Farhan. He's the Saudi foreign minister, born and raised in Western Germany in the 1970s. So he grew up on the right side, on the capitalist side of the Berlin Wall, but he grew up in Europe. So he's been a really, really good diplomat for MBS because he was raised in a European society, but he's Arabic. And so, he knows how to go into these European courts and treat with the Europeans very well because he grew up among them. This guy right here is, his name is, I actually have his name written down right here, but he is one of the 4 guys. His name is Masoud Al-Iban. Masoud Al-Iban. And he is one of the guys, one of the 4 people that MBS brought into the room when he said, no one's leaving this room as soon as he became defense minister, when his father became king and his father made him defense minister. He shut the doors and he said, no one's leaving this room until we figure out how to tear down the entire government and rebuild it from scratch because the government's corrupt and we got to throw all these bums out. And there are 4 men. This guy right here in the glasses was one of them. And I think this guy, it's hard to tell because like his hood, his Kafia is covering his face, but I think this guy right here might be one of the other ones. This might be Khalid bin Abdul Rahman Alisa. And if that's who that is, then he is one of the other guys who was in the room that night. But they met for 12 hours. They came up with an entire plan of how to tear down their entire government, dissolve every single agency, and rebuild it from scratch. And 10 days later, this is January 2015, the whole thing was done. They had rebuilt their entire government from scratch, and in theory, it got rid of the corruption. But of course, that would require arrests, which didn't happen for over 2.5 years after that, almost 3 years. Just to give you a timeline of what we're dealing with here in America. But yeah, so that's just some inside baseball. King Abdullah expressed pride in the historical relations between Riyadh and Amman during his meeting with the Crown Prince. The Petra news agency reported he acknowledged the significant role of Saudi Arabia in supporting Arab and Islamic causes. The two leaders discussed recent developments in the region, particularly the situation in the Gaza Strip and the occupied West Bank. Petra added Saudi Minister of Defense Prince Khalid bin Salman, Minister of Foreign Affairs Faisal bin Farhan, Crown Prince Hussein, and Director of the Jordanian King's Office, Allah Batinch, attended the meeting. So those last two guys, these four are all Saudis. These two guys that they named, they mentioned FBF, Faisal bin Farhan, and Khalid. They don't mention these two guys, which is fine. But I can probably be certain that, yeah, so those are the other two. I was going to say the Jordanian guys are definitely going to be wearing Western garb because that's how they dress. They don't wear the robes. They dress like Westerners. Because again, the Hashemites are close allies of the West and have been, and we betrayed them after World War I because we didn't betray them, but some scumbags in London betrayed them on our behalf. So anyway, yeah, the guys in suits are Jordanian and the other guys were Saudis. And these guys in this room, I think, are the best allies we have in the Middle East, and the people that we can rely on to be good actors in making sure that the Middle East is a safe place. So those are the guys that I think we're going to lean on. Anyway, let's go to Russia because I want to do Russia, and then I want to do India too. Okay, so Trump, this is the one I want to do. Trump says, I think we have a deal with both Russia and Ukraine. This is from yesterday. U.S. President Donald Trump said on April 23rd, he believes a deal between Russia and Ukraine to end Russia's war has been reached. I think we have a deal with both. I hope they do it. Trump told reporters in the Oval Office. Trump has reportedly proposed brokering a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia with concessions Kiev has not put on the table. The U.S. is reportedly weighing recognizing Russian control of Crimea. Trump noted President Volodymyr Zelensky has been harder to deal with, but that's all right, meaning harder to deal with than Putin. I thought it might be easier to deal with Zelensky. So far, it's been harder, Trump claimed. Funny, that's the exact same rhetoric he said, talking about the Palestinian president and Netanyahu. He's like, I thought Netanyahu would be easier to deal with, but I was wrong. He's a pain in the ass. Palestinian president is very easy to deal with. Trump said that the U.S. has reached a deal with Russia and must reach a deal with Ukraine, despite in the same address claiming he thinks the U.S. has a deal with both. I think we have a deal with Russia. We have to get a deal with Zelensky, Trump said. Earlier on April 23rd, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance said that the U.S. presented a very explicit proposal to Ukraine and Russia on a peace deal. Vance repeated warnings that the U.S. might drop its peace efforts if both sides refused to settle a peace deal. White House officials have warned that Washington would abandon the peace efforts if a deal is not reached soon. Moscow has shown signs it is unwilling to move forward on a peace deal with Ukraine. Russian authorities have listed maximalist demands in ceasefire negotiations with Ukraine and the U.S. Ukraine has already agreed to a U.S. proposed full 30-day ceasefire, saying on March 11th that Kiev is ready if Russia also agrees to the terms. So far, Moscow has refused. On April 23rd, Zelensky reaffirmed that Ukraine insists on an immediate, full, and unconditional ceasefire. That was the proposal put forward by the United States on March 11th of this year, and it was absolutely reasonable, Zelensky said. Yeah, so they're basically talking about the exact same deal that was being offered back in whatever May of 2022, with the, what was it called, the Minsk agreement, or the Minsk Accord, I think is what it's called. But anyway, so let me just flip through these really quick. These tabs. Oh, okay. This is a good one, because I mean, a lot of these stories are kind of like the same story, just different facets of it, and so I don't want to spend too much time just running through the same story over and over again. But this is a pretty important one. Iran, Russia. This is from today. Iran, Russia agree on 55 BCM of gas supplies, nuclear plant funding. Iran, Russia tighten cooperation in face of Western sanctions. Iran seeks to improve ties with Russia in banking, agriculture. Tehran and Moscow eye gas hub in Iran. Russia may ship 1.8 BCM of gas to Iran in 2025. Price not agreed. Russia may fund construction of a nuclear power plant in Iran. Listen to that. All right. A little bit of background. Iran already has a nuclear power plant, and the United States built that for them. It opened in 1975. Obviously, we severed diplomacy with them in 1979 when the Ayatollah came into power with the Iranian Revolution. But the Soviets helped them maintain that power plant. So the power plant has been running since then. But when they made peace with the Soviets, they brought the Soviets in to help, because the Soviets had the expertise to run the nuclear power plant. And so they do have a nuclear power plant, and that, of course, is how they're enriching uranium, is because they already have the technology. We, the United States, gave them the technology in the 1970s. And that's because they signed all the nuclear agreements that we asked them to. And it's worth noting that Israel has never signed a nuclear agreement. Not one. Moscow and Tehran have reached a deal on 55 billion cubic meters of Russian gas supplies a year, though prices are yet to be agreed, while Russia also pledged to fund the construction of a new nuclear power plant in Iran, officials said on Friday. The preliminary agreements came as the United States is looking to isolate Iran from the rest of the world unless Tehran agrees to a new deal for inspections of its nuclear facilities. Russia has deepened ties with Iran since the start of the military conflict in Ukraine and signed a strategic partnership with Tehran in January. Both countries are under Western sanctions, and Moscow's oil and gas exports to Ukraine have drastically declined. Russia has a long history of cooperation with Iran and helped to build a nuclear reactor at Bushehr in the south of the country, Iran's first. That's not entirely accurate. The U.S. built the power plant. The Soviets just helped them finish it and helped maintain it. Iran oil minister Mohsen Pajnajad has been on a visit this week in Moscow. On Friday, he met Russian energy minister Sergei Tezvelev at an intergovernmental commission. It's so messed up that they lie to us about this. They don't tell you that the United States built them their nuclear reactor. We built the nuclear reactor at Bushehr. Not the Soviets didn't build it. It's ridiculous that they can't tell you the truth. I hate these liars. I hate them so much. Shana news agency citing Pagnajad said both countries agreed on a 55 BCM gas transfer agreement, while a new nuclear power plant in Iran would be constructed with financing from Moscow's credit line. Despite holding the world's second largest gas reserves after Russia, Iran imports gas, including from Turkmenistan, due to severe underinvestment caused in part by U.S. sanctions. So look at that. Our sanctions prevent them from developing their natural gas program. And that natural gas program, by the way, could, provide energy to the entire Middle East. But there's very specific reasons that they don't want Iran to have that kind of power. Sezvelev, speaking alongside Pagnajad, said that Russia may supply 1.8 billion BCM of natural gas to Iran. Those names are actually easier than the Ukrainian names to me, just saying. 1.8 billion BCM of natural gas to Iran this year at a price yet to be agreed. Russian President Vladimir Putin, at a meeting with his Iranian counterpart, Masoud Pezeshkian, in January, and the Kremlin already said Russia may eventually supply up to 55 billion cubic meters of gas per year to Iran, though starting from lower volumes of up to 2 BCM. Okay, it says a figure of 55 BCM would be similar to the throughput of the Nord Stream 1 undersea pipelines in Europe that were damaged by blasts in 2022 and have not delivered any gas since then. Speaking on state TV earlier on Friday, Pagnajad said Iran will sign a $4 billion agreement with Russian companies to develop 7 Iranian oil fields. He and Russian ministers signed a final document of bilateral agreements after a meeting of Russo-Iranian Economic Cooperation Commission, but the details were not disclosed. Russian gas giant Gazprom signed a memorandum last June. Man, and you know what? Interesting. Signed a memorandum last June with National Iranian Gas Company to supply Russian pipeline gas to Iran. Possible routes for the pipeline have not been disclosed. Paznajad said Iran would implement the agreements with Gazprom, including a regional hub for distribution of gas. The two countries have long discussed setting up such a hub in Iran with the possible participation of Qatar and Turkmenistan. So there you go. Qatar is like known for natural gas. That's their historically in the ancient world, they were known for pearls. They have massive pearl banks on their north bank, I think it is. But in the modern world, their money comes from natural gas. So them partnering with Iran on a deal with Russia, again, man, I like the likelihood of Trump in the Iranians meeting in Doha. I suppose Putin could be there too, but I like, from a storytelling standpoint, from a writing standpoint, I like Putin in Riyadh better than Putin in Doha. So that's just my opinion. That's how I would write it, because then MBS can be there. Gazprom, by the way, for those who watched my episode, my Book of Trump episode, we did Righteous Russia with Burning Bright on the origin story of Putin. This guy, Roman Abramovich, and I want to make sure I get this right. Isn't Abramovich behind Gazprom? Gazprom Neft is the third largest oil producer in Russia and ranked third according to refining throughput. It is a subsidiary of Gazprom, which owns about 96% of its shares. The company is registered and headquartered in St. Petersburg. By the end of 2012, Gazprom Neft, history. Yep. 1996-97, Sibneft was privatized through a series of loans for shares auctions. Roman Abramovich and Boris Berezovsky. Let me see if I recognize this guy. Yeah, dude. Wait, Boris Berezovsky. That's this guy. Hold on. Yeah, here we go. I already had him on my map. Boris Berezovsky, right here. Channel 1. This is the guy who he helped create the political base for Putin to put Putin into the presidency in 2000, and then he killed himself some years later, and in 2013 he was found like he killed himself, but the circumstances were very sketchy, and there's a lot of speculation he didn't actually kill himself, and that he was arcanicided basically by in the old Hillary Clinton kind of way. Abramovich, though, he's interesting. He's one of the oligarchs. So yeah, Gazprom right here. He's one of the oligarchs who capitulated to Putin, and when Putin came into power, part of the aluminum wars, one of the like KGB guys who came into the aluminum wars, and the oligarchs rather who came out of the aluminum wars in the 1990s. And Abramovich, after Putin invaded Ukraine in 2022, Abramovich came out and sided with the West like sided with like the globalists against Putin and was like talking about how evil Putin was. So it says right here, like his wealth decreased to 6.9 billion in 2022 before rising again to 2023. Abramovich, let me check this out, because he was sanctioned by Putin. Yeah, because like he claims him and Putin aren't friends. That's like his official story. And yeah, here it is. It says that because he was sanctioned, it says following the Russian invasion, which is right here, follow the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Yeah, he's one of the Navalny 35. That's right. So the Navalny 35 are a group of Russian human rights abusers, kleptocrats, and corruptioners involved in poisoning and imprisoning the Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny. So he's like accused of being part of the group that like poisoned Navalny, with the Novichok, which is like a Soviet chemical that only Russians can use. Novichok. It's like as if the CIA has developed that too. And so it says, following the Russian invasion of Ukraine on 10 March 2022, Abramovich was sanctioned by the UK as part of a group of 7 Russian oligarchs. Abramovich had his UK assets frozen. His travel ban was put in place. And then it says March 22, he was house hunting in Dubai. But I know that it was could have sworn that he had a so he was accused of being a bagman for Putin. He's been accused of antitrust law violations in Russia. He had a dispute with Igor Kolomoisky. That is very, very in 2014. And that Putin went after Kolomoisky for reneging on a contract with Abramovich. I could have sworn that Putin went after Abramovich. One second. No, I guess he still does have a good relationship with Putin. I could have sworn that he spoke out against Putin and Putin slapped him down for it. But maybe Putin slapped him and he recovered from it. Anyway, I digress. Sorry for going sideways on that. But yeah, that's notable. So Abramovich is working with Putin on that. Yeah, sorry, I'm just trying to make sense of that in that moment. Sorry for the autism. All right, let's go to. I think that kind of gets us kind of caught up on the Russia stuff. Trump and Xi are talking, but there's not really much to report there. That's just more tariff stuff, but nothing really of substance. Let's talk about India, because this is like a pretty big story that they're trying to make a big deal out of, and it is a big deal. So there was a wait, this isn't the right story. This is the story. India downgrades ties with Pakistan after attack on Kashmir. Tourists killed 26. This is from 2 days ago. India-Pakistan ties deteriorate further after New Delhi announcement. India suspends key water sharing treaty, closes only land border crossing. So let's give some background here, because I'm sure people have heard about this. It says India announced a raft of measures to downgrade its ties with Pakistan on Wednesday, a day after suspected militants killed 26 men at a tourist destination in Kashmir in the worst attack on civilians in the country in nearly 2 decades. They're referring to that terrorist attack in Mumbai in 2008, I believe. Diplomatic ties between the nuclear-armed South Asian neighbors were weak even before the latest measures were announced, as Pakistan had expelled India's envoy and not posted its own ambassador in New Delhi after India revoked the special status of Kashmir in 2019. Pakistan had also halted its main train service to India and banned Indian films, seeking to exert diplomatic pressure. Tuesday's attack is seen as a setback to what Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his Hindu nationalist Bharatiya Janata Party have projected as a major achievement in revoking the semi-autonomous status Jammu and Kashmir enjoyed in bringing peace and development to the long-troubled Muslim-majority region. On Wednesday, Indian Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri told a media briefing that the cross-border involvement in the Kashmir attack was underscored at a special security cabinet meeting, prompting it to act against Pakistan. He said New Delhi would immediately suspend the 1960 Indus Waters Treaty until Pakistan credibly and irrevocably abjures its support for cross-border terrorism. So this is interesting because I wrote about this in the brief this morning. If I were to guess, as I said in the brief this morning, this terrorism that was there, and I'm going to show you a map so we can give everyone context as to what we're talking about, because otherwise it is too confusing to understand. But as I said, I think that this is probably ISIS-K. You will recall ISIS-K is the Pakistan-based affiliate of ISIS. It's the group that attacked the Abbey Gate in Kabul during the Afghanistan withdrawal, killed the 13 U.S. military servicemen. And then as a result of ISIS-K doing that, the Taliban making good on its promise that it had made to Donald Trump that if the U.S. left Afghanistan, the Taliban would hunt down and kill State Department funded, or I'll just say all terrorists, but State Department funded terrorists, of course. And that's what they did. They hunted down the ISIS-K guys who did the Abbey Gate attack and killed them. And basically said we did it for Donald Trump. Based. So let's jump over to this tab. This is, well, let's go back to Google Maps because that map doesn't really give you any context. All right, so we're back here. We're zoomed out. We're looking over here. Here's Afghanistan. Here's Pakistan. Here's China, and here's India. This area right here, which just looks like, I mean, you got dash lines everywhere. It looks like an absolute nightmare of a political situation. This is Kashmir. Jammu and Kashmir. Technically, it's part of India, but it has like this semi-autonomous status. It's a Muslim majority. This is where the Sikh live. You may have heard of them. The Sikh are not Muslim. They are their own thing, and they have fought the Muslims for many centuries. The British actually allied with the Sikh and then also fought them. Interestingly enough, you go back 200 years to the early 1800s. The East India Trading Company. This is a very, very valuable piece of land because it's a crossroads. This is a river valley right here. Let me see if I can. Yeah, there you go. So see, like this is a big river valley. I wonder if we can get. Can we get? I don't know if it will let me tilt it so I can see like some topography, but maybe the terrain. Yeah, there we go. So you can see all the mountains. So there's like a river valley. There's a big river valley right here. See the river? And so this is what connects India and China to Afghanistan and Pakistan, which means this is the crossroads. This is how you get from Asia to the Middle East. This is how you get from Asia to Europe, is through this like river valley. So the East India Trading Company, the British East India Trading Company, really had a high value for this river valley, and so they ended up going to war with the people here, and they had the Anglo-Sikh War. They went to war with the Sikhs, the 1847, and they won. They ended up actually selling Kashmir, I believe. They sold Kashmir back to the Sikhs in exchange for, I believe, access to this river valley. And yeah, there's a very convoluted history here between the Sikhs and the and the British. But the British have had their hands all over this territory for the past 200 plus years, and it's because the East India Trading Company needs that river valley to access the trade route between Asia and the Middle East. And let's see, I took some notes. I did some research on this, took some notes. So the Treaty of Lahore, the company essentially sold Kashmir to Gulab Singh, which was the Sikh ruler, or at least he was a vassal into the Sikh Empire, for 7.5 million rupees. And then let's see, the East India Company's interest was not in colonizing Kashmir. It was about consolidating British control over northern India, installing loyal rulers like Gulab Singh. Let's see, they wanted to create a buffer between them and the Russians because they really didn't like the Russians. They also wanted to control the trade routes in Kashmir that pass near Kashmir, Central Asia, and Tibet. And then some of the, let's run through. So in 1947, you get the partition of Palestine, which creates the modern nation of Israel. You also get the partition of British India, which chops up, basically it was like modern day Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Tibet. All of those were all part of the British Empire. And so they chop up all of that into the India Union and Pakistan. So Pakistan becomes Pakistan. Let's see. Am I looking at? Yeah. So Pakistan becomes Pakistan. The India Union is India. Kashmir up here. Nepal. I think Nepal is part of it, and Bangladesh. And then this is actually India up here as well. And then I think a few years later they did another partition where Bangladesh became its own country, but that I digress. Point is that ever since 1947, a lot of significant geopolitical things happened, not necessarily under the greatest of conditions of circumstances. Let's see, some of the notes I took. October 1947, tribal forces from Pakistan invade Kashmir. They signed the Instrument of Ascension to India, so the Indian troops are airlifted to defend Kashmir, and the first Indian-Pakistan war starts. India goes to the UN. They ask for a resolution. They create Resolution 47, which creates a ceasefire and a referendum asking for Pakistan to withdraw its troops. The referendum never really happens. Ceasefire line, a line of control is established, splitting Kashmir between India and Pakistan. India organizes elections in Jammu and Kashmir, but the Pakistanis and the Kashmiris accuse the elections of being rigged. Imagine that. That this is we're in the 1950s at this point. 1965, you get the second India-Pakistan war. And so the 1960 water treaty is that. That's what this is. That's what the Indus Water Treaty. That's a big part of this. So the 1960 Indus Water Treaty is in 1960. They sign a deal, and that allows for, it's brokered by the World Bank. It allows for the divide of the water in the Indus River system between India and Pakistan. Oh yeah, I wanted to show y'all, and I know we're getting close to quitting time here, but I wanted to show y'all, this is kind of amazing, because this is a part of the world that you don't really hear about a lot, and so you don't really have any context or appreciation for what they're talking about. But I just wanted to show this as you get. Okay, so this guy is Ranjit Singh, and he was he's the guy who creates the Sikh Empire in the 1830s, Well, it looks like from 1801 until 1839. So when he dies, that kind of sets up the whole situation for the East India Company to go to war with the Sikhs, because he was in charge, and then the strong ruler dies, and the East India Company sees opportunity. But I want to show you what this guy built. So this is like in the early 1800s. He builds, because when you see this, you're going to be like, what the hell? And remember, this is northwestern India. That you've heard Indo-European. This is where they claim a lot of like the origins of Europeans may have actually come from this territory. Like Aryan, the term Aryan is actually thought to come from Iran and Western India. But what does he build? This thing built the... I thought I had this thing already pulled up. Here it is. The Golden Temple. Look at this thing. All right, so this is like this is the palace that this guy built. Look at this massive palace, this giant artificial lake that he builds, and then this golden thing, the Harmandir Sahib. All right, it was completely renovated by this guy, and like I was looking at pictures of this thing earlier. Look at this thing. That's gold. And so, one thing about India is they have some pretty advanced, sophisticated architecture, and always have. I mean, they built this thing 200 years ago. So this is not a primitive culture. That was what the British were contending with in India. Is unlike Africa in the Middle East, they were not dealing with primitive people in India. They were dealing with some pretty sophisticated people, and so they had to figure out how to maneuver around them politically and manipulate them. And that's how they figured out, well, if we pay off one warlord, we can pay this guy and use his fighting force against this other guy. And instead of sending, the British army in to kill these guys, we can just use the Indians to kill the other Indians, right? Because you had Muslims, and you had Hindus, and you had Buddhists, and you had a number of other, Sikhs. You had a number of other ethnicities and religions there. So it was pretty easy to shake things up with the right leverage. And so that's how they developed proxy wars. That's how they developed the whole concept of proxy wars and paying off one tribe to kill another tribe. And so they took all the principles they learned there between 1730 and 1850, and then they applied it to Africa, applied it to the Middle East in the 20th century, and the rest is history. So, but all that was learned in India. Anyway, let's do a few more minutes on this, and then we'll get out of here. So this water treaty that's signed in the 1960s, I have a video of the Indus Water Treaty Dam. They have these dams that allow the water to flow into. Here's a pretty good map. So we were just looking at Jammu and Kashmir. Here's India. Here's Pakistan. And so you have these massive dams that India has now closed the dams. And so the water is now not flowing into Pakistan. And this is notable too, because MBS and the Saudis have invested tens of billions of dollars in building these hydroelectric dams in Pakistan. And now those hydroelectric dams, I can't imagine they're going to be running, or at least some of them won't be. So it is interesting. But the reason I set all of that up is because I want to play this video from the the Pakistani defense minister. And here it is. Okay, so it says Pakistan did dirty work for the West in supporting terrorists. Defense Minister Khawaja Asif has admitted that Islamabad backed terrorist groups on behalf of the U.S. and UK. Pakistani Defense Minister Khawaja Asif has called out the West and the U.S. in particular for its role security tensions in the region. Asked about his country's support for terrorism in an interview with Sky News released on Friday, Asif admitted that Islamabad did the dirty work for the Western powers for decades. Quote, "We have been doing this dirty work for the United States for about 3 decades. You know, you know what? Let's just listen to him talk."
Things cooled down then, and now again the same thing is.
You do admit, sir, that Pakistan has had a long history of backing and supporting and training and funding these terrorist organizations.
Well, we have been doing this dirty work for the United States for about 3 decades, and West, including Britain.
So that's your argument that even though
that was a mistake, and we suffered for that. And that is why you are saying this to me. If we had not joined the war against Soviet Union and later on the war after 9/11, this Pakistan's track record, was not, unimpeachable track record.
Defense Minister, I just want to get back to this particular incident.
Yeah. So he's basically saying that let's go back. If we hadn't joined the war against the Soviet Union and then joined the war on terror, it's like we have a pretty impeachable track record outside of that. But the past 30 years, we've been doing y'all's dirty work. And Asif went on to say, let's see, this is interesting. The minister suggested that groups considered terrorists in the region are not distinct entities, but part of a single organization with a shared religious ideology. They're all mixed up. They're not multiple organizations. They're just one single organization, religiously organized with different faces, different leadership. At times they work together. At times they fight with each other. Asif went on to say that no country in the world has suffered so much from terrorism as Pakistan, and accused India of following a pattern of blaming Pakistan for terrorist attacks on its soil. The minister's remarks came amid an escalation between Islamabad and New Delhi, which followed a deadly attack in Indian-administered Kashmir that left 26 people dead earlier this week. The Resistance Front, a militant group believed to be linked to the Pakistan-based Lashkar-e-Taiba, has reportedly claimed responsibility, prompting New Delhi, which has long accused Pakistan of aiding militant infiltrations in the region, to signal that it holds Islamabad indirectly responsible. Asif, however, claimed that Islamabad has never heard of the organization, while Lashkar-e-Taiba no longer exists. He said it was simply very convenient for the big powers to blame Pakistan for whatever is happening in this region. Asif also suggested that the Kashmir incident was a false flag operation. When asked what would happen if the current standoff with India escalated to the point of airstrikes, he warned Islamabad would retaliate in kind. Okay, so it's important to know that Pakistan has nuclear weapons. They are one of the recognized nuclear powers of the world. Yeah, and that's, I believe, the Soviets, if I'm not mistaken, are the ones who gave them the nuclear weapons. Let me just check that real quick. Talk amongst yourselves. And then we'll do rants and get out of here. But so it says, after India's first nuclear test in 1974, Pakistan felt urgently threatened. Let's see. So they went up ahead and they developed the stuff. They helped the Foundation for Peaceful Nuclear Research. The Kahuta Research Laboratories was secretly built under the leadership of Dr. Abdul Qadir Khan, who had worked in Europe at Urenco. He stole and smuggled centrifuge designs and blueprints for uranium enrichment technology back in Pakistan in 1975-76. With this stolen knowledge, Pakistan developed the ability to enrich uranium to weapons-grade levels. And then they had some Chinese assistance, is believed to have helped in early weapons design. Reports suggest China may have passed on a tested nuclear bomb design to Pakistan in the early 1980s. And then throughout the 1980s, Pakistan built infrastructure to not just enrich uranium, but also to assemble deliverable nuclear weapons. So it sounds like China was maybe the one helping them. Okay, interesting. But yeah, Pakistan has nuclear weapons. I mean, that's, again, the official narrative. So that puts them in a very distinct class among all the other Middle Eastern Muslim countries. Anyway, I digress. The last thing I'll just say on that is that Modi, who is the hugger in chief, vows to track and punish every terrorist after deadly attack. So he says that they're going to hunt down every person who was involved in this, which just reminds me of the rhetoric that MBS used about 9/11. I'm going to hunt down every person who is involved and punish every person who was involved in 9/11. I really hope Modi does that, and I hope they figure out who was behind it. And I wonder if that's going to lead back to either Ukraine or the State Department. Anyway, let's do some rants because it is 4:03. So I'm stepping on toes now. All right, chat. Hope everyone has enjoyed the show. Let's see if we got any. I know we have some Badlands boosts. All right, so all right, Trumpet. $25. Your content, attention to detail is so based and refreshing. Listening to you, I often feel I have more helpful information than I had before. Thank you. I will continue to enjoy your ideas and receipts. Cheers. Well, thank you, Trumpet. I appreciate your support. I hope that this show was also informative. I try to provide background. I'd rather spend more time on a story and provide background so you understand the story than just flood you with headlines that may or may not mean anything to you. And again, we learned about the rest of the world because the mainstream media, the corporate media in Washington, D.C. try to use the rest of the world and our ignorance of it to foment fear and to make us afraid. And that fear is weaponized against us so that we submit to these people and we give them our freedoms and we give them our money. And if we don't have that fear because we have a better understanding of the world than they think we do, then we can tell them to piss off or we can go treat with these people ourselves because these people around the world are good people. I think Crystal there's a $25 rant boost from Crystal about getting Starlink. It says, please go get Starlink. With how dense your info is, it's more difficult never to fall. I think I read this last week. I did, but thank you, Crystal. And I am actually looking into getting Starlink and we'll see if I do. But yeah, the only thing about Starlink, though, is that Jordan Sather told me a while ago that Starlink is great except for streaming. Like, it's great if you want to watch something, stream something and watch it. But for streaming from this side of it, he says it's not quite there yet. So I got to check with Jordan and see, because I think he has Starlink. So I got to see if that's still the case. Yeah, but thank you all for watching. Please hit the thumbs up on your way out. And let's see. We have Maha News starting right now. We have Why We Vote at 5:30, and we have Liberty Din tonight. So thank you all for watching, and we will see y'all next time.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.